So before I get into my full analysis of Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre-back, I think it's beneficial for me to talk about my first perception of Luke Shaw being used as a centre-back, even before the last few games. But before I go any further, let me tell you why you should consider downloading the OneFootball app, because it's become my all-in-one place for keeping up to date with the latest football news, whilst also being able to follow Manchester United specifically, giving me access to all the latest news, videos and articles. It's also the best place to keep up to date with any live football, as during the World Cup they had a live ticker for any updates on the match, confirmation for the lineups as well as a rating for each player, and also all the team stats you need as well to get a better in-depth view of how the game played out rather than just the goals scored. So if you want to support the channel and think you'd also be interested in looking at the OneFootball app, I'll leave it linked in the description and comments below. So assuming you had told me maybe a month or so ago that Luke Shaw would be a potential centre-back option for Ten Hag, I definitely would have my concerns from a defensive point of view. Over the last 2, 3, even 4 seasons, we've seen Luke Shaw go through many different spells of contrasting form. There was periods under Solskjaer and with England at international level when Luke Shaw looked like one of the best fullbacks in all of Europe. Being a fullback who had both the athleticism and physicality to compete with some of the best wingers around the world, being a very good one-on-one defender, and as well from a possession standpoint he was a very good passer of the ball, able to link play with short passes in congested areas, as well as having the ability to drive the ball up the pitch using his pace and power, whilst also having the ability to create chances and even score goals himself when in the final third. However, one big concern I did have with Luke Shaw was his defending at the back post from crossing situations, where he seemed to have a knack of just switching off and allowing the player behind him to move in front of him. And whilst we definitely haven't seen him make as many errors over the past season or so as he was, say, maybe 2.5 seasons ago, it is still an aspect of his game which is still prevalent. And an example of this was against Fulham, which was the last Premier League game for Manchester United before the Premier League broke up for the World Cup. So a pretty recent example, and we can see here that as Willian is driving forward with the ball, that Luke Shaw has some ground to make up on the far side, with Daniel James being about 10 yards ahead of him. However, as we can see when Willian gets towards the edge of the box and plays the ball down his outside for Tom Kearney's run, Luke Shaw has actually made up this ground, but when the ball goes across the box, he seems to just have a lapse in concentration and allows Daniel James to get in front of him, and the ball goes across and Daniel James knocks it into the net, which put Fulham level in this game. So Luke Shaw is far from the perfect player defensively, but just because a player has a few deficiencies in his game doesn't mean that Ten Hag can't get the best out of him and use him successfully. And just from watching Luke Shaw over this season, I think most people would agree that he's up there with some of the best fullbacks in Europe, and I think there's a solid case to make that he's not just one of the best, but the best left back in world football at the moment. And so later on in the video I will be discussing whether it's even worth moving Luke Shaw to centre back given how well he's playing at left back. But first, let's identify why Ten Hag wanted to use Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre-back, particularly over a player like Harry Maguire, who, despite there being rumours that he was ill, I actually think it was Ten Hag just preferring Luke Shaw, but choosing to give an alternative reason as it would deflect away from Harry Maguire, because I think that Ten Hag rightly anticipated the media storm that would come with leaving Harry Maguire out for not just another centre-back in the squad, but for a player who was a left-back who had never really even played at centre-back before. So the main reason for Luke Shaw's selection in my eyes is that he has the mobility and athleticism that Harry Maguire just doesn't have. I would much rather have Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre-back than Harry Maguire in a high defensive line, as Shaw has the acceleration and pace to deal with players running in behind him, and we all know over the past few seasons that this is definitely one of Harry Maguire's weaknesses, as he has a turning circle of a London bus. Luke Shaw is also going to be much better at defending in one-on-one situations when he's in a channel than Harry Maguire, and in possession overall I just think he's got the ability to inject pace into the attack a lot better than Maguire, able to receive the ball and drive forward up the pitch, bypassing pressing players, and this is hugely beneficial when United switch the ball from the congested right side over to the left side where there's more space, and Luke Shaw can drive forward with the ball, beating the opposition's pressing line and progressing the ball into the middle or final third. But I also think Luke Shaw is a better long passer than Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire is a decent long passer, we've seen him switch play, but I think Luke Shaw has a lot more potency to his passes, and what I mean by this is that he is still playing the same sort of long pass, but he gets the ball out of his feet a lot quicker, and I feel that he puts a lot more pace on his long passes, whereas Maguire tends to float his long passes, and the difference is that the ball obviously gets to its destination a lot quicker. If we go higher up the pitch, Luke Shaw is obviously a better crosser than someone like Harry Maguire, or pretty much most centre-backs. He does like to back up the play. I wouldn't say he's as good a crosser as someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold, but he still has the ability to create chances via putting in these deep crosses, and a perfect example of this would be the goal that Casemiro scored against Chelsea. We can see here that Luke Shaw picks the ball up in quite a narrow crossing position. It's not really a fullback position, position where he's on the flank, and it is a type of position that you could see him picking up as he's backing up the play as a left-sided centre-back. With the left-back alongside him holding a wider position on the flank, Luke Shaw could move into these sorts of positions when United have the ball in the final third, and as we saw with this Casemiro goal, he has excellent delivery from these sorts of positions. And so the benefits of using Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre-back are pretty obvious. You get another offensive fullback on the pitch, who's a much better ball carrier, crosser and forward passer than most centre-backs. And we can see this backed up statistically when we look through Luke Shaw's FB Ref report. When compared against every other fullback in Europe's top 5 leagues over the past 365 days, we can see that Luke Shaw ranks in the 90th percentile or higher for his short passes completed, his passes into the final third, progressive passing distance, progressive passes, the number of times he's been dribbled past, the percentage of dribblers he's tackled, and his passes into the penalty area. And so we can see that Luke Shaw is not only very good when it comes to progressing the ball into the final third and into the penalty area via his passing, but he's also very good when it comes to his short pass interplay, which is obviously going to be perfectly suited to Ten Hag's possession orientated approach. And so by having Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre-back compared to most centre-backs is going to hugely improve you in possession. However, as with any positional conversion, you are also going to have to cope with certain deficiencies when compared to regular centre-backs. As I said before, positionally from crossing situations when his job is to mark the back post, he does switch off sometimes, but he also ranks in the 40th percentile or lower when it comes to the amount of aerial duels he's lost, his dribbles completed, the percentage of dribbles he's completing, the overall amount of tackles he's completed and errors made, and also the amount of dribblers he's tackling per 90 as well. And so from this statistical analysis we can see that Luke Shaw is very much a covering defender who is quite different from a defensive perspective to someone like Lisandro Martinez, who is very good at being aggressive and pushing out of the back line to apply pressure and put in a standing tackle. I do think both Varane and Lindelof are much more covering centre-backs than stopper centre-backs. I do think Varane is good enough where he can play either, but Lindelof I definitely think is a covering centre-back rather than a stopper centre-back. So that is something to bear in mind when you look at who Luke Shaw is playing in that centre-back partnership with. But I should say this isn't to say that Luke Shaw isn't a good reader of the game. He actually ranks in the 73rd percentile for his interceptions, and I do think he can show his front foot defending when a pass goes into a player and Luke Shaw reacts before them, stepping out and making the interception. And so I wouldn't say he's a completely passive defender. He does have that front foot defending ability, but particularly playing as a centre-back, I think from a stylistic perspective he would much more suit playing alongside a defender like Lisandro Martinez. And so I think this all boils down to Luke Shaw being a good centre-back option if United really need him, but I don't think he's a long-term starter for United in that position, and he's much better utilised as a left-back, and he can even fulfil a lot of the same tasks that he would as a left-sided centre-back, potentially inverting as a left-back and taking up a lot of the same positions that he would do as a ball-playing centre-back. The other obvious thing is that Manchester United do have Lisandro Martinez, who is a better defender and centre-back than Luke Shaw, so there's not really the need to move Luke Shaw into that left-sided centre-back position in the long term. It's more as a covering option if Lisandro Martinez is unavailable, as he has been over the last few games. And so the answer to my question, should Luke Shaw be United's long-term centre-back, is obviously no, because Lisandro Martinez, I think, even in possession, is a very good passer, and I think it's pretty hard to find an upgrade in that position on Lisandro Martinez in world football, let alone in the United squad. But I do think that Luke Shaw is a very good backup option to Lisandro Martinez. He has a lot of attributes that the likes of Victor Lindelof, Harry Maguire and even Rafael Varane just don't have, and we've seen it with players like Yuri and Timber who have moved from fullback to centre-back. They seem to offer something different, and I think it's something that Ten Hag likes. And so whilst I would keep Luke Shaw at left-back, as I do think he's one of the, if not the best players in that position in world football at the moment, I do think in certain games when Lisandro Martinez is absent, Luke Shaw is a very good option to have as a left-sided centre-back. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like, check the description for more videos as well, and put your thoughts on the game in the comments section below.